Hello and welcome to the next edition of Musings of a Mariner Sojourning in the Land of Woke. I'm Christopher Hunt. I'm coming at you from the Big P, a vessel out here in the Gulf of Mexico. I'm in Port Fourchon, and I finally finished the book After the Ball, How America Will Conquer Its Fear and Hatred of Gays in the 90s, written by Marshall Kirk and Hunter Madsen, PhD. Now, these gentlemen wrote this book in 1989, and it was meant to be and was used as a manifesto to forward the gay agenda. And with that, they had a three-part series on, not series, but a three-part plan on propaganda. And with that three-part plan, it was desensitization, jamming, and conversion. Now, the desensitization, the idea of that was to have people come out in the open, to come out, or to have homosexuals placed in ads or in movies, commercials, or what have you, in a way that was very non-intrusive, very mellow, rather than not having like a flamer, but maybe having somebody who is just like the average Joe, but is very prominently known as being gay, is part of the desensitization, where it's not to be too strong, because then that would have the opposite effect. And then they have the idea of jamming. Jamming, the engine of prejudice can be made to grind to a halt not only by desensitization, in which it is simply allowed to run out of steam, but also by the more active process of jamming. As the name implies, jamming involves the insertion into the engine of a pre-existing incompatible emotional response, gridlocking its mechanism as thoroughly as though one had sprinkled fine sand into the workings of an old-fashioned pocket watch. Jamming as an approach is more active and aggressive than desensitization. By the same token, it is also more enjoyable and heartening. And in that, they end up coming up with an idea of, okay, they have like an average Joe construction type worker guy, like he's a good old boy, he's a beer drinker, he likes to listen to his country music, and he's a homosexual. Having an ad with a picture of a construction worker, to where you have like, okay, your immediate reaction is going to be like a thought of, oh, he's a good old boy, he's whatever, and then all of a sudden it's like, and he's a homosexual, so then it jams you up. So like you get the good reaction to the original photo, but then the words jam you up, and you have a hard time associating the picture with something negative. So that way it jams you up and maybe starts to make you change your mind on what you think about homosexuality. And then the third part is conversion, which it isn't enough that anti-gay bigots should become confused about us or even indifferent to us. We are safest in the long run if we can actually make them like us. Conversion aims at just this. So there you have, there are three forms, and then in here they have a whole bunch of ads, that show the different methods. Like if you're going to do like newspaper ads, magazine ads, or radio ads, or television ads, and they have a whole slew of ads that they created as prototypes to show people. And so there's that part. And now one of the things that they try to push in here is that it's natural, it's something that it's born, it's inborn, it's not something that is learned or chosen or caused by externals. But in the book itself, they admit that certainly it is. For instance, here they admit that things like sexual addiction could lead some to homosexuality, and here, I'll read from page 35. This elaborate scientific explanation of the several steps from masturbation to homosexuality, when laid out in linear fashion this way, probably seems as far-fetched to you as it does to us. Even though the authors do in fact suspect that masturbatory conditioning and imprinting may play some part in the development of some homosexuals. Imprinting, pornography, sexual addiction leading into the homosexual lifestyle. And then here on page 184, this is where they try to say, okay, we need to convince people that it is a natural inborn thing and we're a victim of circumstance. It's circumstantial. Okay, now 2 different messages about the gay victim are worth communicating. First, the public should be persuaded that gays are victims of circumstance, that they no more chose their sexual orientation than they did, say, their height, skin color, talents, or limitations. We argue that, for all practical purposes, gays should be considered to have been born gay, even though sexual orientation, for most humans, seems to be the product of a complex interaction between innate predispositions and environmental factors during childhood and early adolescence. To suggest in public that homosexuality might be chosen is to open the can of worms labeled moral choice and sin, and give the religious intransigents a stick to beat us with. So right there they're saying, okay, yeah, it's a choice, but we cannot voice that, and we want to deny it and help to make everybody feel that we're a victim of circumstances. And going back to the jamming part, in the jamming, they talk about how they wish to portray themselves as victims that need protection from straights, so that straights will, in compassion, feel the need to protect the weak homosexual. And they talk about that a lot in here. And then to show that the progressiveness of sexual addiction, from masturbation, pornography, to homosexuality, and then in homosexuality, the progression that they speak about here is, and just what does love have to do with all this? The course is much the same regarding sexual practices. When one is young and inexperienced, the tamest, most vanilla-flavored gay sex, mere cuddling and mutual masturbation, is more than enough to do the trick. It's new, forbidden, dirty, and exciting. As one gains experience, vanilla sex with one partner becomes familiar, tame, and boring, and loses its capacity to arouse. At first, the increasingly jaded gay man seeks novelty in partners rather than practices and becomes massively promiscuous. Eventually, all bodies become boring and only new practices will thrill. 2 major avenues diverge in this yellow wood, 2 nerves upon which to press, that of raunch and that of aggression. So you see here that the sexual perversion progresses and progresses and progresses. And now to touch on something very controversial. You see, back in the 1980s, the pediastry, the pedophile homosexuals were a part of the entire community. And one of the things for changing their image, because a big part of this is talking about the horrible, disgusting lifestyle that a majority of homosexuals live, promiscuous, gross, dirty, and it really is all of those things. And they wanted to change that image, and a lot of this book is dedicated to getting people to stop acting like that, or at least not to do it in public. Like, it talks a lot about public sex, because public sex was a big thing. In Harvard, they talk about in the book how the gay sex in the public restrooms was so bad that eventually the doors were taken off, and they started having police patrol the bathrooms to make sure gay sex was no longer happening in the Harvard bathrooms. And they talk about all of the gay sex in public restrooms around parks and so on and so forth. It's very, very disgusting. But here, talking about their connection, some fear that a media campaign featuring only ordinary-looking gays would disdainfully disenfranchise drag queens, bull dykes, and other exotic elements of the gay community. In that, they mentioned it a little bit earlier, were organizations such as NAMBLA, the North American Boy Love Association. This is not our goal, and it is painful to think that such people might begin to feel like second-class members of their own outgroup, so they're part of the group. Our ultimate objective is to expand straight tolerance so much that even gays who look unconventional can feel safe and accepted. And then, going on to here, they talk about how they want to bring back the ideas of Greece, of ancient Greece, and start to have their own kind of gay families, which would comprise of a young gay, a little bit older gay, and then an elder gay, and they're all being in their own in their relationship, and as it continues on to where it's like their family, and they have, like, so when the younger one gets older, it gets another young one and brings them up, gets another young one, brings them up, and you have like this triple thing going on. And in here it says, indeed, in fostering a cult of youth, our community has already achieved a biologically unwarranted and exaggerated idealization of the extremely young as sexual partners. And it goes on, if we can, through media manipulation and the expression of age-related prejudice, create a self-sustaining cult of youth, we can create alternatively a cult of middle age, or to press the point, old age. And here on page 360 on their self-policing social code, this is a code that they were trying to create to help with their propaganda code. The rules for relations with straights. I won't have sex in public places. That's a rule because it's a normal thing in their lifestyle. I won't make passes at straight acquaintances or at strangers who might be gay. Wherever possible and sensible, I will come out gracefully. I will make an effort when among straights not to live down to gay stereotypes. I won't talk gay sex and gay raunch in public. If I'm a pederast or a sadomasochist, I'll keep it under wraps and out of gay pride marches. Why? Because that hurts the image, and people would have rejected their whole agenda if they were tied up with that. But I believe, and now they are really pushing such things, eventually that's going to be a part of it. Now that they've accomplished what this book was trying to accomplish, they're already going so much farther. Okay, if I'm a transvestite, however glamorous, I'll graciously decline invitations to model lingerie for Oprah or Donahue. And then, roles for relationships with other gays. I won't lie. I won't cheat on my lover or with someone else's. I'll encourage other gays to come out, but never expose them against their will. Tested or otherwise, I'll practice safe sex. And the reason they talk about that is there's a big part of their community who purposefully spreads disease. They speak about that in this book. They have like the patient zero for AIDS who was flying all around the country and sleeping with all kinds of people anonymously and spreading AIDS originally. They have homosexual communities, not all, some have bug parties. They call them bug parties, where they have these big orgies where a few of the people have diseases, sexual diseases, and they spread them around to the party, right? They have sex, unprotected sex, and spread it. So that's one of the reasons that they have this rule in here, that they'll practice safe sex. I'll contribute money in meaningful amounts to a gay cause. I will not speak scornfully or cruelly of another's age, looks, clothing, or social class, bars, elsewhere, okay, yada, yada, yada. But it goes on and has those, but the main ones were the roles, relationships with straights that I was kind of get to here. And so with that, you have, the connection to the pedophiles, and they know it, and they in here they mention, they say straight up, we don't condemn you, but we need you to kind of lay low, get out of the way while we're trying to gain this acceptance and get our laws passed, get the legislation passed, and what have you, become a protected, get marriage and so on and so forth. They needed to get that group to be hidden, even though it's part of that group. And in here too, like when we're talking about the ancient Greek type of thing, where they are grooming up the next generation, the very young. They say very young. Now they go to point out, oh well, we're not advocating sex with minors at all, but you heard what I just read, and with that, you look at the crisis in the Catholic Church right now, and it mirrors this. It mirrors what they were saying right here. The grooming the young, because the sex abuse crisis in the Catholic Church right now is generally priests with younger boys, teenage boys, and priests and bishops with seminarians, where they start to groom and bring them into the homosexual lifestyle. So you see the cycle starting to go, and you see that, wait, okay, they're not born that way. Sexual addiction, abuse, grooming brings people into the lifestyle. They're not born that way, but they want you to feel they're born that way, when in reality it's completely against the natural law. Why? What is the natural end for sex? The natural end for sex is procreation of the species. So any sex act which does not have as its end the procreation of the species is therefore contrary to the natural law. So therefore homosexual sex, contraceptive sex, masturbation, all of those things are sins or offenses against the natural law. I won't say sins, there are sins, but they're offenses against the natural law. What the natural reason, the natural end of sex is. So with that, that's just self-evident reason for sex that can't be denied. And so with that, it's not natural, it's not good, it's not something that should be going on. It's definitely not something that should be being forced on our children. Now, we have some things happening today. For instance, there's legislation that was passed in California, and now they have the history books and the social science books, K through 12, which have homosexual propaganda in the school that you're not allowed to opt your children out of at all. You're not allowed to opt out. It's not like sex ed, where you can opt your child out of sex ed. You can't opt your child out of this homosexual agenda that they have inside of their new textbooks. It's something you can't do. And also, they have this new program going on in the public libraries across the country, and what do they call it? It's the drag queen story time. So for 3 to 6 year olds, they have drag queens come in to do stories and watch homosexual videos and teach your children all about homosexuality, really, and to coax them into the homosexual life at a very young age. And this is starting to happen in our public libraries across the country. Right now, I've got a friend who is trying to get a petition going to end end it or stop it from happening in Lafayette, here in Louisiana. And so the conversion part of this book is continuing on. You've got, if you go and you go on to Netflix, you go on a TV, all of the series, even in Spanish, I watch a lot of shows in like different languages too, but it's all pushing the homosexual agenda to such an extent. You always having girls make out with each other on regular shows. You've got on a show that is aimed towards teenagers I watched not too long ago. You had a transsexual child on there. At first, it took me a minute to figure it out that that's what was going on there. You have even guys making out on these shows now, and it's become a very normal thing where it's being pushed and pushed and pushed, and now it is something to be ashamed of if you speak out against the homosexual lifestyle, which was the part of the jamming, the desensitization, and so on and so forth. So as we go on and I review this book in depth, I want you to see that, so many people try to say that this agenda doesn't exist, that you're just a bigot if you say it does, and so on and so forth. Well, here's the manifesto that was used to forward the agenda, and the agenda is still going forward. So it is real. I am not a bigot. Some of the people that are opposing the homosexual movement are bigots, are homo haters, or are homophobes. That's true. But many of us are not. I am not. My mom, she ended up for many years before her death started living a lesbian lifestyle. Now, when she came out, I told her, Mama, I love you, you're my mom, I'm always going to love you, but I'm not going to tell you what you're doing is okay, because it's not, and it's going to lead you to hell. And I can't tell you that it's okay and that I'm okay with you doing it. And I told her friend, Loretta, no, I love you as a friend, I will continue to be your friend, but I do not agree with the way you and my mom have taken your relationship. So I will still be your friend, but I will not tell you that it's okay to do that. She immediately decided not to be my friend anymore, and tried everything she could to cause my mom and I to not have a good relationship. And when my mom got cancer and I moved back to Washington to help take care of her, she had at that time stopped living the homosexual lifestyle, started going back to Mass, went back to the sacraments, started watching EWTN all the time, and thanked me many times over the last couple of years of her life for never caving, for never telling her that I accepted it or never being okay with it. She and I only spoke about it when she brought it up. I didn't bring it up. She really told me that me sticking to the truth helped her to leave the lifestyle. And on the day that she died, she received the last rites, the extreme unction, and the last words that came out of her mouth was a prayer. Hail Mary, full of grace. Those were the last words my mom spoke. My actions were not the actions of a homo hater or a homophobe. My actions were the actions of somebody who loved the homosexual that was in my life. And that's what I wish. I wish for all people who are same-sex attracted to live according to the law of God, to come to God, and to be in heaven. That's my desire, and And I really pray that happens. And also another thing, talking about the natural, the aspect of the natural law, there's another part of this book, just a little paragraph that I want to read, that really demonstrates with their own words how the natural law works and how they are working against the natural law. Quote, "Part of this is due to the characteristics of male physiology and psychology which make the sexual and romantic pairing of man with man inherently less stable than the pairing of man with woman. Sorry if the truth hurts. C.A. Tripp, in the Homosexual Matrix, has written extensively on this subject." Here, in simplified form, is some of what he has to say. First, although it's not fashionable to say so, men and women really are physiologically and psychologically different in ways bearing cogently on their differing approaches to affairs of the heart and body. Okay, so it goes on to speak about how naturally it is much easier for a relationship to last between a man and a woman than it is between a man and a man. And they go into all their opinions of why this is, but that's just the way that it is. Another thing about this book I'll just say is, like, when they're talking about the propaganda, it's really a great game plan for getting ideas out into the realm, to get people to change their minds. If you could stomach some of the really gross stuff that's in here, because it really describes the lifestyles that they're living, which are very promiscuous, very dirty, very seedy. In their own words, they're describing it. They're talking about what they need to change to make the world accept them living in that kind of a lifestyle. But oh my goodness, it was a very hard book to read. The last half of that book was extremely hard. But it's got some really great ideas for propaganda, and they obviously work very well because they accomplished what they were trying to accomplish. Now, for anybody that is struggling with same-sex attraction, or has family members that suffer with same-sex attraction, there is Courage and Encourage, which is a Catholic organization, which I'll link to beneath this video. If you are struggling with this and you wish to live a chaste life, I strongly urge you to please look into Courage and Encourage. And also, if you are a straight person who is opposed to the homosexual agenda, I urge you to tread with love. Tread with the love of Christ. When you have any kind of confrontation, or you wish to write something on your Facebook page, or do whatever you do it in love. Do it with the idea of, is this going to help bring another soul to Christ? Is this going to help somebody else come to heaven with me? Or is this going to push somebody deeper into the pit of hell? And use that as your guide on how you deal with person to person with somebody of same-sex attraction, and how you deal with it in the public sphere, in the public media. Thank you for listening to this this last episode that I just made of Musings of a Mariner Sojourning in the Land of Woe. I hope you continue listening. God bless you all, and have a great day.